Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today we're going to go to Scotland back to 1979 and 1980 for what is called the Templeton Woods murders. These two young ladies whose murders have supposedly never been solved. And this was recommended to me, and I went and looked at a documentary, and let me tell you the name of the documentary. It's a Channel 4 documentary called In the Footsteps of Killers. I will link the actual show that I watched. It's on YouTube, so if you're not in the UK, you can watch it. I'm pretty sure it's I'm sure the person who put it up didn't have the rights to do so, but it is there. But if you are in the UK, you can watch Channel 4 and you can see it. It's abominably bad. I'll start out with that. It was dreadful. It was 45 minutes of torture, horrible music, horrible, I wouldn't call it acting, horrible interactions, just dismal. And what made it very upsetting for me was that there are two criminologists in it, well known, and both of them I was very disappointed in, shall I say. So that's what I'm going to get into today. I'm going to be talking about criminal profiling in these two cases and how you don't want to do it, and what I saw being done in the media, which is this television show where you had profilers saying stuff that was not professional, in my opinion, not accurate, and I don't know why they were saying the things that they were saying. Was it for TV? Did the TV people say, hey, you should talk about this, pretend you didn't know that? Or did you just not do any research? I just don't understand, but I was very disappointed. So I will get into all of that. And I want to welcome everybody who is in the chat room. This is a live show for those who are with Patreon. And just so I can say this really quickly, if you'd like to be in the chat room, please join Patreon in the link below. It's $5 a month. And there are 8 live shows. There's 2 every week. We have the case show like today on the weekend. And during the week, we have a hangout when I talk about lots of different news items and any cases people would like me to talk a little bit about. Any questions they might have, I might answer. You don't have to join Patreon to see all of my videos. Every one of them goes live, goes public after I finish the show. But if you can join, go over to YouTube and subscribe. That supports the channel. Please hit the like button for any of the videos, and please hit that bell so you get notifications. And check my playlists to see, because I've done hundreds now of different cases you might be interested in. This is an educational channel. I like people to learn. Whether you're a detective who wants to broaden his ability to analyze crime, or you're going into some kind of police work, or you're just a regular person who wants to understand people around you and how to analyze life, this is a good place to be. So please do check into the playlists, and any case you might be interested in that you don't know if I've done. You can also go to the search engine on YouTube and put in profiler Pat Brown and whatever you're interested in. So check all that out. So anyway, welcome everybody who is in the chat room. Glad you're here. I like having people to talk to during my show. And I don't know how many of you saw this documentary. And if you did, what'd you think of it? Oh, here you go. Kim says, hello, Pat. I just watched that dreadful documentary you suggested we could watch. It was terrible. It's terrible I went over to IMDb, and I mean, it was trashed into the ground. I mean, not for the reasons that are most important to me, which is the profiling aspects and the analyzing of evidence and telling a story that is accurate, but that was what bothered me the most, that you have two professionals who really, in my opinion, let the public down by not telling them the truth about things. But a lot of people hated it because it was boring. It was slow. It was not good, shall we say. So, but yeah, it's funny because they've gone on to have, the show has continue. I forgot what season they're in now, but I can't believe they made it past season 1. But anyway, the people are going to see here is Emilia Fox. She is an actress, and she is what they call here, she's just, I don't know what she is, eye candy. And so then we have David Wilson here. David Wilson is a criminologist, a very well-known UK criminologist. And so they're walking around together and she goes, "What do you think of this?" And he says, "I think this." And so basically she's there to ask questions, which aren't good questions. And then he answers them and they're not good answers. Another person who is in this show. Oh, this is David Wilson. Over here we have Graham Hill, who is also a criminologist, a well-known criminologist, and he was extraordinarily disappointing as well. And now, mind you, I'm not fond of Graham Hill anyway. Why is that? I will tell you why that is. Graham Hill. Let me find my little article here. I have known about him for a long time, and I've always felt him to be, how can we say this? Going along with the media in any way, whatever makes him popular in the media. He was a former senior police officer, and there's an article here that says they're talking about the Madeleine McCann case, and the headline is, and this came out, I don't know, when did this come out? Not sure. Senior detective argues Madeleine McCann investigation was flawed from the start. And then it explains that they have now a 43-year-old German man who's a prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. That would be Christian Bruckner. And so you think this thing's going to be about him talking about what he thinks of the Christian Bruckner suspect. But he just completely dodges it. And I went and looked every place. I couldn't find him talking about Christian Bruckner at all. And it's because I think he's representing the UK, and Scotland Yard has not been very open about, do they think Christian Bruckner was the abductor of Madeleine McCann, or was there any abductor of Madeleine McCann? But he's kind of siding with them. He's going on with the abduction theory, which I don't agree with, but he's not talking about anybody that the Scotland Yard hasn't come up with. But it says here that he is a. Where is it here? Okay, so Madeleine McCann had been missing several days when he's giving a story. When I arrived in Praia da Luz in May 2007, I'd been sent to Portugal as part of the UK's Child Exploitation Online Protection Centre, CEOP, in response to Madeleine's disappearance, which is always seems to me odd. Within 3 days, why don't you let the Portuguese take care of their own cases? But anyway, I was a detective superintendent and senior investigating officer with knowledge about predatory child sexual abusers and non-familial child abduction. And so he feels sorry for Jerry and Kate and so on and so forth. So he's been in the media basically saying Madeleine McCann was abducted and the Portuguese police sucked. I'm not in favor of him for that reason, because he knows what the evidence is and he's not honest about it. So I have a problem with him. But he's in the show. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set aside my feelings about him and the Madeleine McCann case. What is he going to say about this case? And I will let you know. Now, David Wilson is a very, very well-known criminologist, and he apparently has become the host of this series. Now, mind you, I've been in television series too, so I'm not going to fault him for doing that. I just don't think he's good at what he does, or the series is so bad, or I don't know. The producer sucks, that's for sure. So I don't know how much to blame him for, but yet he says things in that series I know he should know better and not say, because it's simply not the truth. So let me start out by saying that. All right. So let's see if anybody else watches horrible series. Hi, Amy. You're here. First live. Welcome, Amy. Well, Amy said the documentary is a lot of tripe. Pretty much. Oh, the case is from your hometown. You're from Dundee. Oh, okay. Very interesting. I'm going to, yeah. Oh, Leslie says, I was waiting to hear so many details that didn't even materialize. No. And what they put in there was questionable, shall I say. All right. So let's get to this case. Let me go away from these guys for a second. Just give the basics of the case for those who have never heard of this particular case. All right. Now, these two women were murdered. And let me go to just the basics on her and the basics on her. And then I'll go back in a little bit what the documentary says. All right. So now here we have Carol Lannen. She's 18 years old. She was murdered first, and 11 months later, Elizabeth was murdered. So she's first. Um, she was found in this Templeton Woods forest, and it's basically it's a park. And apparently, it was a park that's right outside of town. Let me show you a little map here. Right outside of town. Okay, so where you see the last sighting of Lannon and last sighting of McCabe, you're going to see them in the two little red dots. So basically, both were in Dundee, going to bars, pubs, and vanished out of them. And they were both found. You can see the two little green dots in this park, not that far away, but not right next door to the pubs, but a little bit of a distance away. So whoever grabbed each one of these women, or the same person who did it, went and found this particular park, the Templeton Woods Park. Now, that park, I'm sure during the day it was lovely. You take walks there, you take your children there, on the pram and all that stuff. But at night, kind of a lover's lane thing. There are certain, people there hanging around, having a good time. I don't know if drugs were used there, but one of those places where some people pull over in their cars and have at it. So, but these two women both were found in this park, 150 yards apart. So she was found there first. So on the 20th of March, 1979, she was in Dundee, and it says here, she was last seen getting into what was believed to be a Ford Cortina estate car. Hold on a second here. Now they're saying a Ford Cortina estate car taxi in the red light district. All right. I've never heard that it was a taxi. I heard it was a red Ford Cortina. Now, this is the beginning of where everything gets already mixed up. She was 11 months later. She disappeared out of the same area, not the exact red light district, but she was taking. She was what was she doing at the time? I think she definitely was. Shall we say, working at the red light district. Now, one of the first things that happens in this case, which drives me crazy with David Wilson, criminologist David Wilson, is he says, seems she may have been prostituting. Really? Okay. Seems. And they do their, David Wilson, here we go. He talks about how Carol was thought to be a sex worker. Thought to be. Apparently she was thought to be that by a lot of the girls who worked in the area who knew her. So I'm going to say she was. Why are we shying away from that? Prostitution is a dangerous job. And when you're out on the street getting into vehicles of people you do not know and they drive away with you, prostitution can cause your death. Serial killers like to grab prostitutes. Why? Because they will get in your car. It's that simple. It's first of all, a prostitute needs the money, so she will get in your car unless you're waving an axe or a knife or pointing a gun. Well, she might even get in for pointing a gun, but she will get in your car. And somebody may see you, but again, a lot of times they don't see. The girls are busy themselves doing their own thing. They walk away from each other and they get into a car. Nobody sees the girl get in the car. Nobody sees the car. So a lot of times the reason prostitutes are targeted is because a John can go pick up girls, and he can pick up a girl. Let's say he picks up Mary, takes Mary off. They have sex. He gives her money and drives her back and drops her off. And everybody says, "Hey, Mary, how was your date?" And she says, "It was fine. John was cool." And then he picks up Candy and they go off. And he comes back and everybody says, hey, John. And John's like, "Hey, girls." They even know who he is. But one day, maybe Candy's there again. And nobody sees Candy get in his car. He takes her away. He rapes her. He murders her and dumps her. And then when people ask those girls, "Who do you think it would be?" They're like, "Well, we don't know. We didn't see who took her. We don't think it could be John because John, we've all been with John before. He pays us our money. He's very nice. We all come back alive. Yeah, well, sure, because at that point, other people were seeing you with him. But now he's not seen with that prostitute or that particular girl gets in a car, nobody sees it, and that's his moment. And now he's almost got people on his side. The girl saying he's a nice guy. So he's less of a suspect than if, he'd never been around before. So, but in this particular case, nobody knew who she got in the car with, all right? And there was a description given of the car that she got into. And according to another prostitute, she supposedly got in a red Ford Cortina. I never heard it was a taxi. I heard it was a red Ford Cortina. Nobody saw her get in the car. And because she was not prostituting, as far as anybody knew, she was out with her friends having a good time, and she probably got in a taxi to go home. So she is assumed to have gotten into a taxi. She is assumed to have been prostituting, got in with a John. Okay. The only car description comes with her, the first victim, Carol Lannen. And then her body was found in this park. It was found naked, and she had been strangled with a ligature. 11 months later, her body is found in the same park, 150 yards away. Also, well, the naked thing is interesting. I first heard almost naked, and then manual strangulation. So this sets up in this horrible show that since she's not a prostitute, that is, at least she's not known to prostitute. She is a nursery nurse trainee, supposedly quiet and shy and rarely drank, although she's out drinking with her friends. And then by the time a trial comes up, apparently they have the defense says she slept with like 13 different guys. It's like, I don't know how much of it's true, but they basically trashed her reputation at that point. And there's some reasons for why they did that. But as far as known, she was not prostituting. But so she might have gone home with somebody, might have gotten a ride with a friend, or she might have gotten into a taxi. Those are the three possibilities. She was clearly seen getting into a vehicle. The other prostitutes saw, at least one prostitute saw her get in and said she was going with this guy, and it was for work. A description of the guy was given and a description of the car. And you will hear about this red Ford Cortina ad nauseum and it really is, it's a big problem in a certain way. So at any rate, these are the two cases. Now, I want to tell you what the let's go to our fellows here that are in this show. They're essentially profiles, criminologist profiles, you can call them whatever you will. But essentially, we got these two guys, all right? We got David Wilson, and we got, forgot his name. Why do I have trouble remembering his name? Sorry, got to pull back up. Graham Hill. Okay, David Wilson, Graham Hill. Now, what would you say? Two women are found, and they claim that the media just was unreasonable and ran away with the story because 11 months apart, two women were found 150 yards apart, both naked and strangled in a park, both taken from the same area of town, both there. So the media had the gall to run away with the concept that there was a serial killer out there. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you guys, do you think a serial killer was out there in 1979, 1980? What do you think of that? Oh, that's interesting. Steve Wright, was a prostitute serial killer who most of the prostitutes knew and thought was an okay guy. So there you go. He's okay unless you're alone with him that moment and nobody sees you with him. Then he kills you. So it really works out well for him. I think this is overdone. I really do. The concept that, and a lot of times people think police didn't bother to investigate because they deserved it. No, but they're just easier victims. That's the point. I mean, they just are. If you're out as a prostitute, and that's why I use the word prostitute, and I won't go and say escort, and I won't say sex worker, working girl. I'm tired of all that. I'm going to go with prostitute because and people say, oh, well, that's a derogatory statement. Well, it's meant to be very honest about exactly what the work is, because sometimes these other ways are ways to get around what the work is. Prostitution is selling yourself sexually to a stranger, it can be a non-stranger, but mostly a stranger. It's very dangerous work. Regardless of whether you call yourself a sex worker, an escort, a dancer, whatever you want to call yourself, sugar baby, you're still doing the same thing, and it's a very, very risky profession, and therefore, it makes you a high risk victim. That's what it makes you. Okay, this is a point. The park could just be an easy disposal site. This is true, Pam. Parks are good, easy disposal sites, but that two bodies are in the same park. Well, it just, it could. One was found earlier, and this another killer could say, well, I'll just blame it on this dude and dump his body in the same park. Possible. Okay. Possibly. However, one needs to have sufficient evidence to conclude a serial killer is a real possibility. Okay, Mike, what would make you think these two victims are not of a serial killer? What would make you not think that? Okay, similarities, how the victims are found. Yes and no. I didn't say it was only one serial killer. Why couldn't it be two different serial killers? So that's the next question. Okay. Tanya says several things tie the two girls to the location, taken from the same area, killed in a similar way, although these two guys go, oh, one had a ligature strangulation, one was a manual strangulation, so different people. One was naked, the other one had, this is the way they said it, had, I guess it was her shirt, like lying over part of her chest. And so the guy, they didn't explain it very well, by the way. It's horrible. The details are crap in this show. And I can't find them anyplace else. But the concept that that the person felt guilt and covered her. Get out of here. Probably not. Psychopaths don't feel guilt. So the concept that they cover up their victims because they feel bad about it later is such nonsense. Why would they feel bad about something they like doing? If there's ever something on top of a victim, it can be for any reason whatsoever. It could be that they didn't want the person to be seen as quickly. It could be because he's like, I'll throw this on your ugly face. Who knows? But it isn't going to be guilt. I guarantee you. Oh, yeah, well, yes, Leslie, I can't, neither one, I couldn't see the autopsies on these two women. I don't see any evidence that absolutely they were sexually assaulted, but they're both naked in a park. So, yeah, one would think, but thank you. This is a good point. Serial killers don't always stick to the same modus operandi. That's correct. So, yeah. What ties them together? They were both, the one was a prostitute, one was not, but they were both abducted from the same location, or both got into a car near the same location. They both ended 150 yards apart in a park. And they're both naked. They were both strangled. I think but they don't have the same profession. One was in prostitution, one was not. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is a point, Amy. It's very confusing. I've heard both sides, mostly naked, all naked. Now, here's what I heard later on. And I can't entirely verify this because for some reason, even though they're doing the show sucks so badly, they don't bother with facts. And I can't get all the information on the trial that I'll get into the one person they arrested in the murder of the second girl that went to trial. So there might be more evidence there. And I found some of it, but not much. They were both strangled. It seems that Carol, this is only thing I can come up with because I say it's pitiful. Carol all I heard was ligature strangulation. I do not hear that a ligature was left there, but there was a ligature strangulation. For Elizabeth, I don't even know, I gave her entire name here. Okay, let me Elizabeth McCabe, just so I think I forgot to tell you. She's 20 years old. She's 18. She's 20. She was at a disco, Teaser's disco. And then 2 weeks later, she didn't come home. So 2 weeks later, they found her body strangled. All right. Now, what I heard later, there was supposed to be a thumbprint somewhere on her neck. And that's why I thought, oh, bango, this kind of strangulation. But then I also heard that she had her shirt or something wrapped around her neck like this. And that's what was hanging. That was what was on her body, that nobody had covered up her body, but that was probably the thing that was left after he strangled her with it and left it on her body. Do I know? I do not. It's because they didn't think it was worthwhile putting the actual facts into a documentary. So I would say it could well be a ligature strangulation or manual strangulation. I really do not know. But they were both strangled, so I'm not bent out of shape over how they were strangled. I don't think that's a necessity. They were both naked, and they had their items taken. Her stuff was found 70 miles away in another town, that's kind of unique. Why would they had to be going to that other town for a reason, 70 miles away, and dumped her stuff there, which is interesting because you would think if you just strangled somebody, you don't really want to keep their stuff around too long. So if it's in a town that's 70 miles away, you don't want to keep that around like, hey, I'm going to go visit my cousin next weekend. Let me just keep her stuff. But they could have done that. So they did find the stuff that was in Aberdeenshire, 85 miles away from Dundee. Police believe that the killer had a connection. Very possible. Her stuff was sort of strewn around town. Now, let me talk about serial killer here. When they said they have no evidence that this is a serial killer, both of these guys are full of it. These are not personal crimes. This is not normally what you see for a personal crime. You don't see naked, strangled women in parks. Now, mind you, can somebody stage a serial killer crime to cover up for a domestic crime? Sure. So is it possible that one of these was a domestic type of crime that somebody was staging as a serial homicide? Possible. But I doubt both of them would be that. So we either have one serial killer, because I don't care whether if somebody killed her in an actual sexual homicide, that's a serial killer. Nobody does it just once. This is not hey, I never did this before. I think I'll try it one time and I'm never going to do it again. No, anybody who will go to the point of abducting, raping, and strangling a woman, dumping her body, is a serial killer. So this is a serial killer crime, you two supposed criminologists. How dare you say that it isn't? It's nonsense. It absolutely is. Now, are they both serial killer crimes? I can't say. But I say the odds of both of these being a domestic crime staged as a serial killer crime is unlikely. My theory is probably both of them are serial killer crimes. Now, the next question will be, are they connected? Did the same serial killer kill both? Now, I can't say. Here's the problem. The comment that both bodies could just be a good place to dump bodies can be true. So 150 yards away is not on top of each other, but the second killer could easily have heard that, she was dumped in this park, and he's like, oh, that is a good place to dump, and he does it too. So in that case, you'd have two serial killers. But on the other hand, it could be one serial killer who killed both of them. I do not know. The MO is very similar. And I don't care whether she was manual strangulator or ligature. That's really kind of fairly meaningless. One is a prostitute and one isn't, doesn't mean anything either. Because sometimes there are serial killers who will kill different ages, different races, different lifestyles. Some will kill outside and then kill inside. You can't go by MO as, everything has to match exactly. No. So this could be one serial killer, could be two serial killers. But I will guarantee you it's a serial killer crime. And two criminologists should know better actually had the gall to say, hey, we don't know if it's a serial killer crime. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So that's the first thing that really ticked me off. Um, uh, would you inform the general public? Yes. Yes, 100%. When you have a sexual homicide, you should immediately say, we have a I use the word suspected serial killer, because anybody who does this is a serial killer. You just don't know whether he's done it before or he's going to do it again. It could be his first, it could be his second, it could be his 10th. We don't know. But I call it suspected just to put the pretty word there. But I would tell the public, we have a suspected serial killer. Therefore, in this area, we have a guy who is willing to commit this kind of a crime. Yes, the public has a right to know. The police do not like to tell the public this, usually, because it puts a lot of pressure on them. If you just say this is, push this off as a domestic, well, then you don't have to worry about it because, hey, sorry she picked a bad boyfriend. Sorry she picked a bad, you can push it off by saying it's a bad boyfriend or a bad husband. And then nobody has to be worried, and the police can go about their business and not be pressured to catch the guy before he does it again. Of course, serial killers don't usually do what they do in all the stupid, films and stuff where they kill every week. They have to catch him again before he kills 20 women in less than a year. No, a lot of times there is a year between. That's not unusual. So, yes, I think it's only fair to say that we have a suspected serial killer. Say it that way. And we want to make sure that we can try to identify this person so we can get him off the street so he won't harm anybody else. Nothing wrong in saying that. Well, now you're becoming a profiler. Oh, this is a good point. Good point. Okay. It could be that someone is a serial killer, but it was their first crime and they died afterwards. This is true. There's serial killers stop for a number of reasons. One is they get incarcerated. Two is that they get killed. Three is that they become incapacitated in some other way. Now they're wheelchair bound and just can't really do much. Or they get scared they're going to get caught. There are some who go, okay, that was too risky. And they might find other ways to do their stuff, get their enjoyment. But it could be any of those. Does it have to be a stranger? No. A serial killer sometimes will kill somebody he knows. It tends to be a stranger because it's easier not to get caught. But there's not some that have killed like a coworker. They could be a security guard in a building who says, "Hey, Mary, how you doing today?" And then, "Mary, I'll walk you to your car." And since security guard is a number one job of serial killers, you might want to think twice about having the security guard walk you to your car in a dark parking lot. And if he's not seen, he might kill somebody he does know. So yes, it can happen. Okay, so now let's see the next thing. All right, let's talk about what was seen in this particular crime. So, what happened in this crime here? Why they thought they came up with they didn't have a suspect for her, but they said that she just went in that car that a prostitute said was a red Ford Cortina. Now, here is the next problem I have with this stupid documentary. They went on and on about this red Ford Cortina. At least David Wilson did. And then she was identified, a red Ford Cortina. Now, all right. There was a, let me show you there was a sketch of this guy. So the prostitute sees Carol getting into a vehicle. I'm just going to show you this picture here first. This is a picture this is the photo fit. Okay. This guy looked like this. Okay. All right. Now she gets into a red Ford Cortina. This plays a huge part because David Wilson later comes up with a different suspect than was the only guy that got arrested and went to trial was for Elizabeth McCabe, not for Carol. But the guy that went to trial with her was a taxi driver, and then he eventually he got off. And I'm going to get into that, but I want to first talk about the red Ford Cortina, the guy they're going to sick with this crime later on. So you hear that a prostitute saw her get into the car, and she gave a description of the guy, and she said it was a red Ford Cortina. And if you watch this documentary, you'll hear this over and over again, as if it's a fact. And David Wilson, how dare you? That was never, ever a fact. Let me tell you what actually happened. The witness gave a description of the guy who was in the vehicle. Now, first of all, I want to stop right here. The guy was in a vehicle. I don't know how well that the friend, prostitute, co-worker, what do you want to call her? I don't know how well she could have seen this guy. How long was she standing there staring at this guy? Generally speaking, a girl goes up and goes, "Hey," and the guy goes, "Yeah, jump on in." How much? And she says, "So much," and she jumps in the vehicle. Off they go. Generally speaking, the other women on the street aren't standing right next to you half the time, or they could be, but they're also looking for customers. I don't know how she got such a great look at this guy to be able to describe him the way she did. So first of all, I have no idea how long, because I haven't seen any interview of this woman, to say how long were you staring at him? How good a view did you have of him? Was it dark in the vehicle? Was it bright in the vehicle? Were you standing next to Carol? And did you look in the vehicle at this guy so you could describe him the way you did? Now, if she did, then that would be a very good description, but I have no knowledge, and this documentary didn't bother to waste time giving that information out. And I want to know, did you see him for a second? Did you see him for 2 minutes? There's a big difference in whether you can trust the description of the guy. So then she gave this description, and then we hear that she said it was a red Ford Cortina. So I'm like, okay, so the woman must know her cars, right? I don't know about you, but I don't know cars. I know my red Mazda. My daughter drives a Camaro, but I couldn't identify a Camaro if it pulled up. Honestly, I could not do it. I can identify a Volkswagen Bug and a Volkswagen van because they're so unique. I don't even know if I can identify a Mazda immediately, because there's a couple other small convertibles that look similar that I might have to stop and go, is that a Mazda or not? So here's this woman. Does she absolutely know her cars? And in that period of time, was she able to identify the style of car that she knew it was a Ford and she knew it was a Cortina? How did she know this? Now, so it's very convincing, because the later suspect that they have, do you know he turns out to drive that car? A red Ford Cortina. Oh my God. This is part of the show where they come up with this new suspect. And they're kind of, shows like to come up with something. Oh, look, we figured it out type of thing. And the guy drives a red Cortina. So his neighbor said, from way back when. A neighbor, can you even believe that neighbor? We don't know if that neighbor's telling the truth either, or whether he fed the information. We have no idea. But I want to stop and talk to you about the red Ford Cortina. You know what really happened? She couldn't remember what the car looked like. I found this information out through research. She couldn't remember what the car looked like. So they took her to a hypnotist. And through the hypnosis process, she came up with supposedly a red Ford Cortina through the hypnosis process. Now, hypnosis is a lot of times not permitted in a court of law. Why? Because it's garbage. A lot of times a person can be misremembering that car from another car. They could be guided by the psychologist to come up with a conclusion that isn't true. They have found out that descriptions of witnesses and cars and other things by a person under hypnosis is not necessarily the truth. So she did not remember that dang car. She came up with it during hypnosis. So that it was a red Ford Cortina is not a fact at all. Not at all. Could it have been a Cortina? Sure. Could it have been red? Sure. I just don't know, because I see no evidence that it is true. It might not even have been, sometimes it's not even red, depending on the street lights. I came out to the a parking garage one day and I'm looking around going, oh my God, my car is gone. And that's because under the lights in the garage, my car was not red anymore. My car's bright red. It wasn't red. I'm like, where's my car? There was only one parked there. It didn't look like my car. So depending on lighting and how much she's paying attention, or whether she's had other cars being, pulled up, and she's thinking, oh yeah, was it a red car? Because I knew it was a red car. Maybe it was a Cortina, but not a red car. Not a fact. And it was presented as a fact in this show. And that appalls me because David Wilson should know better than to do that. So let me check some of your comments and then I'll get on to more about this thing here. All right. Okay. Oh, hypnosis isn't supposed to be allowed to be used with witnesses. I was subpoenaed as a witness in a stabbing and I wasn't supposed to have that rapid eye. Wait a minute. Rapid eye what? Oh, and this is a good point. Also, if she did get in that car, we do not necessarily know that it was the last car she got into, just the last one. She was said, oh, very good. I like it. That is also true. Just because she got in that car doesn't mean it was the guy. Because also, if you were that guy who did pick, let's say it really was a red Ford, I forgot what the name of the car was. Sorry. It's not an American car, so it's hard to stay in my head. Let's say you were that guy, Cortina. Let's say you were driving a red Ford Cortina. You were actually the guy who picked her up. And the next day you find out that she's been murdered and left in the park. Do you think that John is going to rush over to the police to say, oh, it was me? No, he's going to hide like you wouldn't, He's going to say, please don't ever remember it's my car. Please. He's never going to come forward. So that's very possible. He could have picked her up and she could have said, drop me over here. He dropped her in a different place. And she said, wow, I still don't have enough money. Got a different guy's vehicle. Love it. You're way better profile than those two dudes. Very impressed. Oh, rapid eye desensitization therapy. All righty then. But that was excellent. That was excellent profiling work. Very, very well done. Well, that may be as far as the more unique in style, maybe. But I'll tell you this is absolutely true. Guys remember cars better than women because guys are more into cars than women. That doesn't mean all women. It doesn't mean all men. But my sons can pick out a car and remember a car way better than I can. I suck at it. And so it's not the same for everybody. But the point is, I don't know what her ability is. And if she had to go under hypnosis to remember the stupid car, my guess is she's not very good at it. Otherwise, she wouldn't need hypnosis. So what we know so far, this is so good. I'm so glad you brought up the maybe it wasn't even the guy. Love that. That's good thinking. We A, don't know if that was the car. And B, we don't even know if it was the guy. That we don't know. All we know is she ended up dead in a park. All right, now let's go to the other crime. Because this is where a suspect came from in the second crime. So Elizabeth McCabe's death. All right, so Elizabeth McCabe had gone out drinking with her friends, and they had some kind of tiff or something. And her friends and she did not leave at the same time. She did not take a ride home with her friend. And there's a real question here about that whole thing because her friend didn't think she had enough money to afford to take a cab home. Family said she would never take a ride from somebody that wasn't a real taxi. And families always say this crap, and it's often not true. Girls will sometimes hitchhike. They will. They go home with a half friend or, oh, I've seen you once at the bar person and you're drinking. She was drinking. So God knows what she'd really do. And also, by the way, getting in a cab doesn't mean it's safe because obviously cab drivers have a good opportunity to also, like people picking up prostitutes, they can get women alone in their cars. And there's quite a few taxi cab serial killers. So not safe. But anyway, she gets in. Well, we don't know what she got in at all. But here's what the story is. Now, there were some people. Let me find where the people were because this gets very interesting. All right. Hold on. Where'd it go? Now, come on now. Oh, here we go. Two witnesses were at this park. They said they saw a Ford Cortina. Now they didn't. Again, we don't. The information is so pitiful. It annoys me, but I can't do anything with it because that's all I got. Is it a red Ford Cortina or just a Ford Cortina? Again, two witnesses. So maybe, but again, are the two witnesses correct, or is it possible that one of the witnesses knows cars and the other one doesn't? They just go along with it. I don't know. Were they drunk? I don't know. Two witnesses reported seeing a Ford Cortina with a taxi sign. Now, that taxi sign is quite interesting. So I don't know whether Ford Cortina is a natural taxi choice for taxis. So that would be interesting. I also don't know what a taxi sign means. Now, some taxis have the embedded taxi thing that flashes on the top. Others have a taxi thing on the side, and some of them are like magnetic. So a guy could pick her up in a Ford Cortina, but not have the taxi stuff on it because he wants to get a prostitute and he doesn't want his taxi company or people to know it was his taxi, right? But when he goes to pick up a girl to actually give her a ride as a taxi driver, he does have the taxi sign. So these could be very well the same Ford Cortina if the Ford Cortina is true, and they could have both been taxi drivers. One could have been a taxi driver taking her. One could be a taxi driver disguising a car. Again, I would have to find the suspect in her case was a taxi driver. I would have to find out from his car whether he could remove those taxi signs or not. And I do not know. And neither did David Wilson when he did his stupid documentary. And if you're going to do this, for God's sakes, get some information. So anyway, two witnesses said they saw a Ford Cortina emerging from this woods area on the night she disappeared. Elizabeth McCabe. They reported that the driver was alone in the car with the interior lights on and that he appeared to be driving with his wrists as if he had dirty hands and didn't want to touch the steering wheel. The two witnesses reported that this was the taxi they actually reported whose taxi it was. I don't know how they knew this. The two witnesses reported that this was a taxi of Vincent Simpson, who ran a local taxi company near Dundee. Now, when I say he ran a taxi company, I think it was just his own taxi. I mean, he just ran his own taxi service. That's what I think is true. Now, this is the guy that eventually was arrested and went to trial. So let me show you this fella. Where are you, dude? Okay. Okay. So this is a photo fit. This is the sketch. And okay, sorry, that's not what I want to show you. Wrong one. Okay, this is the guy they arrested. Okay, now I'll show you something later about this, which has to do with the photo, but this is what he looked like at trial. And there is no younger picture like what he would have looked like at the time this occurred, because we're talking many, many years later that he was arrested. Actually, he was looked at right away, but he wasn't arrested and convicted. Oh, I'm sorry, arrested and taken to trial until there was DNA. So he was like, they looked at him and thought, yeah, this guy could have done it, but that was where it went to. So anyway, this is him. This is Vincent Simpson, and who ran a local taxi company. He drove a Ford Cortina taxi at the time. As a result, Simpson was questioned by the police. And now, mind you, he was found not guilty by a jury. And in spite of there is some DNA, and I'll get into the DNA in a bit, but one of the things the defense said was this guy was an upstanding citizen, a perfectly nice guy, and didn't have a violent background. Now, wait till you hear the story, though. So, okay, maybe the DNA is a little sketchy because, it was some touch DNA and maybe there was contamination. I'll go into that later. But, okay, let's say that's true. But they presented him as just this nice guy. But that, he was married, had kids, great guy. No violent background, right? It doesn't match him. A serial killer, no. Okay, listen to what he said. He admitted to being in the woods on the night McCabe disappeared. Okay, so it was his Ford Cortina, and he was in the woods on the same time that this girl disappears. He's claiming he had taken his dog for a walk there about 10 p.m. and saying he had returned to the woods after midnight on his way to collect a fare in Dundee. So he's there twice. He claimed in a statement that he had gone back to try to steal from a car he had seen in the woods before. Oh, yes, an upstanding citizen. He's a thief. Simpson had a criminal record, no kidding, dating back to when he was a child and was a heavy gambling addict. When shown a picture of McCabe, he claimed he didn't recognize her. He protested they did not have any convictions for violence or sexual crimes. But in an interview on 3rd of March, 1980, he admitted to being a peeping Tom who used binoculars to spy on courting couples in Templeton Woods. He also reportedly admitted to other unpleasant and embarrassing things in his interviews. Peeping Tomism is often the crime that comes prior to rape, because peeping Tom stuff means that you're invading somebody else's territory and you're getting off sexually on it, the thrill and the power of invading their private space. That quite a few peeping Toms have gone on to rape and serial homicide. So that he's not the type of guy, 100% is the type of guy. Now, let me look at a couple of his other crimes. All right. Mr. Simpson had a history of fairly petty crimes as a young man, mostly for dishonesty and with nothing on his record to suggest he was capable of serious violence. He was convicted of larceny in 1967 before being found guilty of theft and going equipped to steal 3 years later. In 1974, he added another theft conviction to his name, and in 1977, he was convicted of burglary and theft. Burglary is another sign of a rapist, because burglars go into houses. And when they go into houses, they invade somebody's territory. A lot of burglars are also rapists. Now, one of the things that'll happen oftentimes when you see burglary on somebody's record, they actually sexually assaulted somebody in there. But because there's a difficulty proving it, it gets pled down to burglary. So they have burglary on their record, but not rape or attempted rape. So they look better than they actually are. 4 years later, he would also be convicted of fraud, making a false statement to police. So we have, supposedly back to when he was a child, he says juvenile delinquent. Then his larceny charge was in 1967, theft in 1974, 1977 again, and in 1981 again. I'm going to say that's 20 years worth of crime. And if you believe that the only crimes he committed were the ones he got, every time he committed the one crime every 4 years, he got caught. I doubt that. I'm pretty sure that he has a long history of crime over the 20 years, and those are the ones he got charged with. Now, I may be convicted of. He even admits at that moment, we're talking about, again, 1980, he wanted to steal something from a car in the park. So the very time of the girl gets raped and murdered, dumped in the park, he's at the park and admits he was there to steal stuff. Mr. Innocence? I don't think so. This guy is, yeah, he's a pretty creepy dude. Very, very creepy dude. So is he a good suspect? 100% a great suspect. Let's go back to our fellows here. Did they think he was a good suspect? Okay, let's look at our guys here. Let's see what they had to say. Oh, okay, Graham Hill. Graham Hill says, oh, you'd have to go back to both of these different girls and see their different lifestyles and then have two different lines of inquiry. No, you don't. You can have two different lines of inquiry, but at the same time have a same line of inquiry. You can say, is it a person who killed both of them, or is it a person who killed two different people? Go both ways, but don't say you shouldn't look at possibility of both of them being the same guy. Okay. The forensic psychologist, whoever that was, said Lannon's body was discarded and no effort was made to cover her but give her dignity. But with Elizabeth, her face was covered with a jumper, probably because it fell on there when he strangled her with it. Because he knew her and suffering from guilt because he didn't want her to see him leave. She's dead. I don't know. Can she see after she's dead? So now we have, this was not the two of them, but this forensic psychologist, whoever it was, claims that Elizabeth, the person, knew her, and that's why they covered her face. That is such nonsense. I can't believe it. Could she have been with a boyfriend who killed her accidentally, and became enraged and decided to strangle her? Sure. And then he decides to get rid of her. But that's why he put the cloth over her face. Or did it just fall over her face? I mean, you do not know that this is somebody who knows her. That's nonsense. Somebody could know her, but there's not absolute proof. Somebody could have known Carol too, which later on you'll see, actually they're trying to claim later on. So make up your mind, dudes. Which way are you going with this? Let's see what else. Another important report from an eminent forensic pathologist was that Elizabeth had injuries that she tried to escape from a car. He thought she was not abducted, but killed very quickly by someone who knew her. First of all, I heard that she didn't have injuries. And then, of course, now it's like somebody killed her very quickly, so she didn't see it coming. She supposedly had defense wounds. Make up your mind again. I don't know what the truth is on any of this stuff, and I don't know what kind of wounds we're talking about. Why can't both of these women fight back against whoever is killing them? And why do they have to know them? You take a ride from somebody and suddenly they turn on you. It can be over just like that. Let's see. Okay, so Graham Hill thinks they're not connected crimes. But so we get this guy. Let's go back to this fellow here. He goes to court. Now, he went to court way later on, because they finally had DNA, and they got DNA that matched him in 3 different locations. One was on the jumper that was around her neck, Elizabeth's neck. His DNA was on that. Now let me see exactly where it said it here. It's his trial. Okay. Let's see. Okay, the DNA at the first trial. Oh, there's more than one of these. At the first trial, it was heard that DNA was found on the jumper draped over McCabe, where she was dumped, very likely came from Simpson. Swabs were taken from 3 different parts of the jumper and all matched the DNA profile of Simpson. The chances of the DNA being found on the right-hand side of the jumper's neck coming from someone else other than Simpson were estimated as 1 in 320,000. The chances of the DNA from the back of the jumper coming from anyone else than Simpson were 1 in 105,000. A hair in a black plastic sheeting used to transfer McCabe's body to the mortuary was also found to match his DNA, with a test indicating that the chances were 1 in 1,300. Together, the combined odds of the DNA coming from someone unrelated to Simpson were 1 in 40 million. So now there was a later claim that the stuff was contaminated, that they didn't handle her possessions correctly, had things in a paper bag or whatever they tried to claim. But what the heck? Just because her stuff was maybe muddled up, if they're testing her stuff and it has never touched his stuff, then his DNA is on her stuff. I don't care if you throw them in the air and up and down a few times and whack them around. If it never touched his DNA, in other words, if it wasn't contaminated by somebody actually putting his DNA on her clothes, or taking his test results and chucking them in the bag and shaking it up and down with her jumper, and unless they did that, his DNA is on her jumper. And there's no reason for it to be there, because he said he didn't give her a ride that night. All right. So anyway, the defense argued that the DNA, Simpson, who was described as smartly dressed and well-groomed, who gives a crap? I mean, they all come to court looking nice, right? He's a defendant. Not going to come looking like a bum. However, his defense argued the DNA evidence must have been contaminated. They alleged that the fact that the hair that matched Simpson's DNA had not been found in an earlier examination was significant. The defense claimed the DNA was also tainted because at that time there were only 3 labs around in the world that were advanced enough to carry out the techniques to use to analyze evidence, meaning it was difficult to check the results. Well, the thing is, it's easier to exclude on being careless, and not doing the testing well. It's harder to include. But Can it happen? Yes. But also, he admitted to being in the park the night she was murdered. And his DNA comes out. These, and he's got a long history, criminal record, and his criminal record indicates to me he's a psychopath. These aren't minor, meaningless little crimes. Dude's a psychopath. He's a fraud. He commits fraud, lying, peeping Thomas, burglary, theft. The dude's a psychopath. And he's spying on people in the park with binoculars. So it's his hunting ground, whatever he's doing over there. And people saw his vehicle leaving. He admitted it, and his DNA matches. I'm going to say this is the guy, for God's sakes. Now, can he be matched to Carol's crime? No, because it didn't have any physical evidence to match to her. All right. Only to Elizabeth. Jury only took 3 hours and found this guy not guilty. And one of the things they'll say is they'll say that he did not match that photo fit thing here. This sketch. Look at him. He's totally different. Well, they won't show you a picture of him when he's the right age. What they do is they show a different serial killer and say, hey, it looks more like him. And here's their favorite new suspect, which I'm going to go into now. Their favorite suspect is this guy. This is the guys on the show and this journalist. I'll show you. His book is this book. I read it's only the last chapter of this book, but it's called The Law Killers. His name is Alexander McGregor. He believes it's this guy. In the last chapter, he gives information about this crime, which is pretty interesting. And then he thinks it's this guy. And so they infer that, especially David Wilson, who goes and tracks down his history. And everything points to this guy, including this photo, because this thing, look at this. Okay, so this is a serial killer. They thought I'm sorry, this is the one they think that. Hold on a second. I'm at the wrong place. Hold on one second. Let me go back here. All right. So this is another serial killer who died and was in prison at the time that the girls were killed. So it couldn't have been him. But some people thought he looked sort of like this. So if he had a mustache. But here's the guy. They say, my God, take a look at this guy. See how the match is so good? Oh my God, it's definitely this guy because look how it matches. Well, what they say is, I'm sorry, let me get this one. This guy didn't do it, doesn't match him, right? Well, that's because he's 60 now. But take a look at this. I did a Photoshop thing. I put him back to younger age. I took his glasses off and gave him a thicker mustache. Well, I'm going to say he could have killed Carol. He looks pretty close to that guy too, if that was the guy in the vehicle who actually killed her. So this is the problem when you say, oh my God, see, it's so clearly this guy. Really? Why can't it be this guy? A lot of times when you have people give a description, it can match so many people. And we tend to think, oh, if we think this is the guilty guy, we think that guy matches. If we think this is the guilty guy, well, it's clear he matches. So you have to be very careful of the sketch type things made from a witness. Sometimes they can be amazing. There's nothing wrong with that helping maybe look at somebody, but that don't depend on that as proof. Well, let me go to the guy that the program pushed and that this guy pushed. Who is this guy? All right. This guy, let's see if I can find, where'd he go? All right. His name is Hunter, Andrew Hunter. This is Andrew Hunter. So there's some of the cops think it was Andrew Hunter that killed Carol. That's the first girl, the prostitute. I'm just trying to differentiate between the two girls. No, not the nursery worker, the first girl, the prostitute that got supposedly in the red Cortina. So they said that it was this guy, Andrew Hunter. Well, he's a social worker. Now, he's an interesting character and probably a psychopath. He killed his second wife. His second wife was, what happened was, all right, let me tell you kind of the story of his life. So he's a social worker and he hooks up with the first wife. And the first wife, while he's with the first wife across the street, he's having an affair with the second wife to be. And the first wife ends up committing suicide. Some people think that Hunter killed his first wife. Now, I looked at that. I said, well, it's possible he wanted to get rid of her. So did he kill her? Well, supposedly she committed suicide by hanging. Now, mind you, I don't have, again, that stupid autopsy report of the police report. I don't know what she looked like. Generally speaking, almost all suicides by hanging are actually suicides. Rarely are they a homicide. It's very, because when you have a homicide with a ligature around the neck, the ligature is usually straight around the neck. Hanging is, you'll see it goes more like this, because you're kind of pulling up like this. Okay, you're hanging, as opposed to somebody putting a ligature like this. So usually the ligature mark looks this way, the hanging looks this way. Now, if they went and picked up her body and the look like this, that's not a strangulation by ligature. Also, if they see no defense wounds on her, there's no fight going on where she was fighting and then got strangled. So what we have is the first wife committed suicide. Now, mind you, could she have been drugged and then hung to make it look like suicide? Sure. Was there any evidence of that, is the next question. If there's no evidence that she was had massive amount of drugs in her system, then it was probably just a suicide. Maybe she was highly depressed, that she was unhappy, and her husband was cheating on her. So could she kill herself? Sure. She could have been very unstable. She married this guy as a psychopath, so makes life very unpleasant. But again, the information's shady and pitiful. So his first wife supposedly hanged herself. Now he hooks up with the second wife. And somewhere along the way, that wasn't working out too well. And he was cheating on her with prostitutes, which brings him to this issue about Carol. The question was, and they bring this out in the documentary, maybe he knew Carol and he did something with her. Well, meanwhile, what about this guy? Well, apparently he got pissed off at his wife and strangled her with a leash of his dog, actually with the dog, with him, and I think it was in a car. And so he dumped her body in a park, but not that park, a different one, and did a whole thing where a whole bunch of a charade where he actually went around with a wig and everything, trying to cover it up and throwing her stuff in different places. He really tried to make it not look like him, and that he had an alibi and all that. Well, he was caught, and he was convicted of killing his second wife. But the other interesting thing is, supposedly the day after his wife disappears, he's with this young prostitute and she ODs. And so there again, did he kill the prostitute because she knew too much? Or was it because she was a heroin addict? I mean, did he kill his wife? Absolutely. Is he a psychopath? Absolutely. Did he see prostitutes? Absolutely. Did he kill his wife with a ligature? Absolutely. Is there evidence he was connected to Carol? Well, they'll try to push that one. They will. And they'll say he was a social worker and she was in care at some point. So they're saying, well, they would have met. They would have met, they keep saying. They would have met. Well, don't they have records at this place? And aren't you a criminologist? And aren't you working with the television? Why don't you go get records and prove if they knew each other? But that isn't there. That it could have happened. It could have happened. They could have crossed paths. Well, they could have. And he could have picked her up just on the street. That's possible. They live in the same area. He could have picked up a prostitute and it happened to be her that night. Could he have done it? Andrew Hunter. Is he a possible suspect in the murder of Carol? Possible. I absolutely believe that they are the right guy for her. So I believe I believe that taxi driver is a serial killer. I believe he killed Elizabeth. I think everything points to him, and it's ridiculous that he got off and did not go to prison over it. I believe he killed her because everything supports that. So she was killed, in my opinion, by a taxi driver serial killer. She may have gotten into a taxi or may have not gotten into a taxi. And she was killed by somebody who also, in my opinion, is a serial killer. Now, could this guy be a serial killer? Well, he could. He only has killed, I say only, one person that we know of, the second wife. Could he have killed the first wife? Could he have killed the prostitute? The druggie prostitute? Sure. Do we have proof on either one of the other two? No, we don't. But also, He did what I call a situational murder. A situational murder is where you get rid of somebody because they're in your way. They're causing you a problem. And the best example would be Drew Peterson, the one who knocked off. Well, Drew Peterson got convicted of killing his second wife, drowning her in the bathtub. His third wife vanished, and they've never found her body. And the first wife believes he tried to kill her. So Drew Peterson, in my opinion, killed two of his wives and probably tried to kill a third. Is Drew Peterson a serial killer? And the answer to that is no. He killed more than one person, but he's not a serial killer. And why is that? Because all of those were situational crimes. The women got in his way and frustrated him, so he killed them to get out of dealing with them. Kind of like a mass murderer family. It's the same, same thing, kind of thing. When you have anybody who just suddenly wipes out their wife and children, that is a person who situationally, or a woman who gets rid of her kids, situationally she doesn't want them anymore. She's fed up with them, so she does this thing to free herself so she can go on, or he can go on with whatever life they want to live. Now, that is different from a female serial killer who kills her children one after the other, like Mary Beth Tinning, 9 of them, boom, 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 and a few others who I think killed their children purposely over time. That's a female serial killer who uses his own children as victims. But this is not, I don't see an evidence that he's a serial killer. He's a situational killer at this, from what I can see. Now, can a situational killer also be a serial killer? Sure, it's possible. He's a psychopath. So he could have serial killing. He also liked doing. Usually they don't come together any more than serial killers and mass murders come together. They just don't usually. It's usually two different mindsets. So far I see him having more of a mindset of a situational killer. But could he have been a serial killer? Well, here's what David Wilson does, which I think is so disingenuous and pissed me off. So he goes in search of answers, right? So he goes and finds this old neighbor, not a recent neighbor, an old neighbor of Andrew Hunter. And he asks some questions. And he says, what kind of car did he drive? And he says, it's a red Ford Cortina. And Wilson goes, aha, there you go. He drives the car that the prostitute was seen getting into, or Carol was seen getting into. Aha. Well, first of all, you don't know if that guy's telling the truth. I don't even know if he's heard about that red Ford Cortina and he didn't like this dude. He hated this guy. He just said, yeah, he drove that. Do you have any proof, David Wilson, who's supposed to believe in facts and evidence? Did you find a motor vehicle record for this guy that said he had that car? No, you didn't bother. Did you find more than one person that said he had that car? No, you didn't. Oh, and then the wife of this guy, she's in the documentary going, oh, the guy was a pervert, because I would be nursing my baby and he would come and stare in the window at me. Nursing my baby. Okay. Now, first of all, I guess you don't have curtains. The guy's walking by your window and your window is maybe on, I don't know where it's next to a path, and he glances in a window and you're sitting there in the window nursing your baby. Well, I can't blame him on that one. And she didn't say he did it just once. He kept doing it. Well, maybe you're just maybe you're the one who has the problem. Maybe you're an exhibitionist and you like teasing this dude, and he'd be in the window going, look at this, every time the dude walks by. I find that a very sketchy. I'm not sure I believe that, so is it true? I don't know whether he A, had that vehicle, and B, actually was peeping Tomming on her, this woman. Whereas this guy said he was doing peeping Tom stuff. He admitted it. That's different. And he drove a Ford Cortina taxi. He has some evidence, along with the DNA evidence, that puts him as the killer, in spite of the fact he's been found not guilty. And so now everybody says, well, that means he's innocent. No, that means he's not guilty in a court of law. But he has the evidence pointed to Elizabeth. Now, this guy, we have this guy, supposedly they're trying to claim in this documentary that he killed Carol. Although there's no proof he knew Carol. There's no proof he drove that vehicle that picked up Carol. There's no DNA that matches him to Carol. There's no proof he's a serial killer. So you're just making stuff up, you know. I mean, he's in prison where he belongs, and he's about. Did he die? I can't remember. Maybe he died. I think he died too. So, but that's not proof. And yet the odd thing was, when it came down to the other fella, they were like totally willing to just toss him out as not even being involved in anything. Yet that's where all the evidence pointed to. So I just thought, what kind of documentary has two criminologists in there saying stuff that's just absolutely just meaningless, in my opinion, and not true and misleading. And you're doing a documentary to show how things work and look at cases and see what's true, just like I'm doing here, except you make a lot more money. It's your duty to be actually using your abilities in the field. Either you don't have good abilities and you're just both of you two a bunch of frauds, or you're just doing what television wants you to, or you just don't care enough because, oh, well, they're paying us and they're just going to they don't want us to bother to look at stuff. I'm not going to waste my time doing research. I'm just going to say, oh yeah, let's go over and, oh, Red Cortina, woohoo, we got the guy. I mean, I find that stunningly bad. So that's why that show was so terrible. Look at some of your comments now. BTK, who I call not BTK, Dennis Rader. I do not believe the original BTK is Dennis Rader, but Dennis Rader's a serial killer and did most of those crimes. I just don't believe he killed the family and Catherine. What was her name? Catherine, first one. I'm trying to remember her name. I personally don't believe he did those two first crimes, but yes, he was a family guy and a church volunteer, and he was a pretty nasty piece of work. Absolutely. Let's see. No, he was only tried for, okay. So our fellow here, what's his name again? Simpson. Simpson was, he was just tried in the Elizabeth case, McCabe's case. And so he never was, there was nothing ever linking anybody to Carol's case. So that's never been tried. Yeah, they found, at the end of the trial, the judge told the jury they must not convict Simpson on the basis of DNA evidence alone. He actually said that. Don't convict him on just the DNA evidence. You have to consider everything else. Well, everything else was the dude was in the park and was a peeping Tom and a psychopath. What part do you have to try? How they let this guy go, I don't know. Unbelievable. They found him not guilty by a majority verdict in December of 2007. McCabe's mother and other family members have attended their trial almost every day and reported have been distressed by the verdict because probably he looked like he was guilty as heck. And the detective chief inspector, Erwin West, said he was disappointed. E-W-E-N. I don't know how you pronounce that, actually. Ewan? I don't know. Said he was disappointed for the McCabe family after the verdict. So now there's little hope of closure for the McCabe family. Well, no kidding. And nothing's ever come up with this one here. The police are still looking for information. Well, good luck on that. They don't have anything. So now Simpson has returned to live in Camberley and is working as a window cleaner, saying he did not fear the new investigation of the murder and saying the cold case will go on and on. The police have got no avenues to go down. He's right, because they already went down the one correct avenue. So, yeah, there's no plan to reinvestigate the cases though, because it's a done deal pretty much. But be careful when you watch these documentaries, and those two, I mean, especially. I was mostly disappointed in Wilson because I already knew about the other guy and I never trusted him. But Wilson, I thought, was going to be much more reliable and would focus on the evidence, but I didn't see him do that either. So I was pretty sad. He is a he's a family annihilator. It's what we call family annihilator. He didn't go out and kill a whole bunch of people he didn't know at one time. That mass murder that's usually the way it's considered. A family annihilator. He got in their way. He just wanted to get rid of them for whatever reasons, and he did. So, oh yes, I forgot about that. Yes, his wife was pregnant. He didn't want to have a kid, so that's a Scott Peterson type, same thing as, Lacey was pregnant. He didn't want to be a dad. He had a girlfriend on the side. He wanted to go off and have his fun. And his wife and a new baby were going to ruin his life for a long time. They're going to have to, he's going to have to stick with them. And then if they get divorced, he's going to have to pay child support. So yeah, sometimes killing off your pregnant wife or pregnant girlfriend is two birds with one stone, so yeah. No, there is an importance in using a serial killer label just because you want to find out what other murders are connected to. They're all murders. That's true. I call them psychopaths. So they're psychopaths who commit murder in different ways. But when it's a situational murder, they're unlikely to do it again, except in rare cases like Drew Peterson. So there are situational murders who killed the first wife and didn't go on and get married and have kids and never kill anybody again. But a serial killer will always want to kill somebody again. It's their hobby. It's what they enjoy doing. That's how they get their power and control. But they won't stop at one. They won't. How many they'll kill over a period of time, I don't know. It could be one person. I mean, it could be 3 people over a period of 20 years. It could be 3 people over a period of a year. It depends on their situation. They oftentimes kill when their lives have just gotten down the toilet again. The girlfriend dumps them, they kill. They lose their job, they kill. So that's why they can find a new girlfriend. They're hanging out. They got their job and their girlfriend, and maybe they hang in there for 4 years, and then everything goes wrong because he's a screw up, and then he loses his girlfriend and maybe his job and maybe his house, and he goes and kills again. So it's important to get a serial killer off the street because they will reoffend if you don't get them off the street. That's the importance. The label itself, but I really don't care about that except for investigative purposes of you want to get the guy. You want to find out who it is so he doesn't do it again. Don't marry a Peterson. And what's the other one? The guy that threw his wife down the stairs? Oh, or maybe not. The owl killer, the owl, Peterson, the owl. Fast. I would go with fast. Yeah. When I say fast or slow, meaning that slow means you take them someplace you want to keep them for a long time. You want to torture them. You want to put them in your little basement and all this stuff. Fast means you just want that moment. And usually then it's the rape is quick and the murder is quick. And then the body is just disposed of. So I would say fast in both these cases. Some people call it disorganized. I prefer to call it fast. Wilson is well known for his crap documentaries in the UK. He gets some all money. He's TV tends to find somebody they like and who's known. And then once you get into TV, you can do show after show after show, depending on how popular you are. If I had FBI with my name, I probably would have had a couple series of personal series where I would have hosted them. But a lot of times when they wanted me, Pat Brown, we'd like you to be the host of a series, not just be in the series as a profiler, but be a host. Then they'd find out I wasn't an FBI profiler. And they would try to, even though I was known on television, they would go to the bigwigs above and say, we'd like Pat Brown. They go, is she an FBI profile? And they go, no. And they go, okay, well, no. We'll have her in shows. We'll bring her in as a profiler, but we want the host to have a better title. And so that's why I never got my own show. At least that's my theory. Is there any, serial killers are psychopaths, but other than that, you're not going to be able to tell. I mean, a psychopath can be a psychopath in many other ways. So they're creepy and they're pathological liars and they don't have any empathy and they only care about themselves and they will use you. My favorite term for them is you're either useful or in the way. A psychopath will think that you're either useful or you're in the way. He's not necessarily a serial killer, but if he is a serial killer, if you get in his way, he just might kill you. So, but you're more useful being, well, I take that back. A domestic murder might be where you were useful and then you were in the way, so I killed you. But a serial killer will make you useful by killing you because he likes doing that. So, well, thank you very much. But I think that ship has sailed. I'm too old now. Not because of, well, Pat, you're not too old. Yeah, I am. In television world, it's not happening. I can still be a profiler. I mean, television will still have me on as a profiler because the news shows, they need somebody really quickly and they don't want to pay anybody. So if I say yes and we'll zoom in on their TV show, they'll have me on. That's for sure. I just won't do it. But I've still asked for documentaries every once in a while, not as a host, but as a participant in documentaries. But they prefer younger. And so now the world as I've gotten older, the world has gotten newer, younger people that can replace me with. And that's the way things work. Well, I think they had the right guy. And it was amazing because when you think about it, there were witnesses that saw him and he admitted to being there. So, I mean, that was extraordinarily fortunate. But the fact that I don't know what happened in the court. I mean, I don't know why the jury didn't find him guilty. I wasn't there, so I can't say. Maybe there's something more that I would have gone, well, I think he's guilty, but I couldn't say. But in 3 hours, they decided he was not guilty. I'm not sure what happened there. I would like to know, but I couldn't find hardly any information on this case anyway. I mean, because that wasn't very enlightened by the television show. But the most amazing part to me was when I found out that the witness to her getting in the vehicle didn't actually know what the car was until she went to a hypnotist and it was brought out of her. I mean, they did not say that in the documentary. And so I'm thinking that car was identified for sure, but it wasn't. And I think I'd like to know if it was even a Ford Cortina. Maybe it was, but if it was a Ford Cortina, why couldn't Simpson be also her killer? Why couldn't he be a serial killer who killed both these women? And he gave her a taxi ride, but maybe went to pick up her because he he wanted a prostitute, and he picked her up and took her and killed her. Why can't he be the serial killer both these women? I think he's a good suspect for her murder. I do. So, and just because this other fellow worked as a social worker. Okay, so here's the thing that bugs me about this. Okay, so we go back to this guy, Hunter. Just because he was a social worker and because Carol once was in care and supposedly they might have crossed paths in the same institution. Remember, this town isn't huge. So maybe there were people that cross all the time. It doesn't mean that even if a serial killer crosses somebody's path, doesn't mean he killed that person when they end up dead. So he could have never met her, or he could have met her years ago and said, Carol, let me help you out. But was he available? And was he there that night in front of that bar? Was he trolling for prostitutes that night in front of the bar? And the question is, we don't know that that's true that he was. So you can't say why he's even connected with zero proof. I think that's outrageous. But I think that Simpson is a much more likely person to be connected to both of these. So, but I would have to find all the police reports and find out whether I don't know what color his the Ford Cortina that he was seen driving and did own. What color was it? Nobody's ever said what color it is. Was it a black Ford Cortina or was it a red Ford Cortina? And of course, again, the witnesses doesn't really know. So, but it's just a shame when they try to present something as accurate and it's not. Oh, really? All the documentaries in the series are the same format. Wow. Yeah, it's I don't think I could make myself watch another one. It was so bad. And it was bad enough without realizing that it was junk. that the information was terrible and the profiling was terrible. I mean, I didn't start out. That wasn't the first thing that occurred to me. The first thing was, oh my God, I'm so bored and this music's terrible. And oh my God, get on with it. That was my first thought. But then I was not happy with what I was hearing for profiling. And then when I found out it wasn't even true, and they were just basically trying to pin it on this Hunter guy, oh, he killed his wife, so therefore he also killed these women, or at least this one. No, not a shred of evidence. I mean, he's not a nice guy, but yeah. So it's frustrating. But do I believe these women were killed by a serial killer or two serial killers? I think it's likely that, that they were killed by a serial killer or serial killers. I find it. Oh, you still watch it? I find out about new cases even if they manipulate the facts. Well, there is that. You do find out something. I just wish that if you're going to call it a documentary, you should be doing the best you can to present the information, especially since you have the money and the manpower. I don't have the money and the manpower. I have, it's a YouTube show, and people say, well, why didn't you do more research? Why didn't you find every single piece of information? And as I point out, I'm not writing a book on the case. No publisher just gave me a $50,000 advance so I can spend a whole year dogging down every piece of information. I'm doing a show every week, and also the ones in the middle of the week. So no, I'm not going to spend hundreds of hours on one show. No. But when you're doing a television documentary, could we do a better job? Please. I would like to just see it be better. And if you're going to present facts, at least make sure they're facts and not made up stuff. So that bothers me. I know you're talking about attachment disorder. Yeah, there's a psychopath and attachment disorder is a problem. So in other words, somewhere when you're a baby and a toddler, you're not connecting with that adult figure, especially the mother, and you don't feel that they're not attaching to you, and therefore you're not attaching to them. And that's why we had the issue with a lot of the Russian orphans, because they were left in these orphanages and basically left in the crib just being ignored. And so by the time the American people adopted them, and that cute little girl or something, oh, she's so cute. And they brought her home. They brought her back over from Russia, and they're like, how do I get rid of her? And people were so horrified that this, you can't just throw away your adopted child. Well, I get there, no, you don't want to do that. I'm an adoptive parent too. The thought of doing that is horrifying. But they didn't know they were getting a little psychopath and a dangerous one. So they start killing their pets. It's concerning. So but there's no attachment, therefore there's no empathy. And then the thing that they learn early on is that I can't win unless I cheat. In other words, when you have a child, you want them to be happy, you want them to be successful. So let's say, for example, you say, if you walk across the room, yay, come on, I'll give you a cookie. The kid walks across and finally gets his first, starts walking, and you're cheering, and then you hug and kiss and hug, and you give him a cookie. Well, that kid won 3 times over, got love and clapping and a cookie. But what about if you're like, look, mommy, I can walk, and the kid walks, and the mother's like, leave me alone. And they didn't get anything out of it. Even worse, shut up, and whacks across the face. So now the kid's like, well, I can't do anything to please you. You're never even nice. When I do the right thing, I don't get the good response. So I don't like the game you're playing. I keep losing at this game. So I'm going to make up a new game board. I'm going to make up new rules. Now you are going to play my game. And that's why I say by 5 years old, if they're psychopaths, they're psychopaths. And you start seeing it really early on in the way they manipulate, the way they lie, the way they don't have empathy. It's scary and it's very sad. And you don't want them to grow up to be violent as well. But you never know where they're going to go with their little brains in order to win in this world, because they don't think they can win in a normal way. So they'll find one way or the other to win. But I'll tell you this, they'll never tell you what the rules of the game are. That's why they always win. So, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Cantor, yeah, David Cantor. Well, I have his books. I like some of his stuff that David Cantor does. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he's. It could be a number of reasons. One reason is maybe because he doesn't want to do that kind of thing. Secondly, he could suck at doing it. Maybe he's just not very good at it. Sometimes people are very good profilers and good writers, but they're really not good for television. They don't have the personality or whatever, and so they don't get chosen. Doesn't mean they're not good at what they do. It's just, and some people are really good on television and aren't very good profilers. Hopefully, that's not me. But okay, it's about yeah, it's very it's close, a little bit outside of town, but not far. No, no, no. Yeah, you're right. It was only 2 to 3 miles. I think you're talking about her purse and clothing or whatever was found like 70, 80 miles away. Now that was a really good clue. And I don't know. One of the thoughts were that whoever picked her up might work in that area, might have relatives in the area, had some reason to be that far away with that stuff. And that it's a big clue. Because the person who killed her had to have been in Dundee and also be in that town. So that's 2 links to one person. And I don't know whether Simpson had any links to where her items were found or not. And if he had no links, it would be unlikely that it would be him, because why would he? Maybe he could drive out of town, which is, he's driving almost at least an hour out of town to dump some stuff. It's unlikely because, they're usually much lazier than that, especially when it's a stranger type of homicide. Then it's like, yeah, well, whatever. Now, with the wife killer, he, on the other hand, when he was trying to disguise that crime because it would link back to him. Let me see if I can find the thing on Hunter, just so I can tell you, just so you can find a little bit more about him, where to go. Where is it? Hold on a second. I know I had something on him here. That wasn't just the nonsense coming from the documentary, but it was in my book. That's where I read it. I said, where did I read all that stuff? Yeah, it was in the book. Hold on a second, just in case you're interested. And when a person that's one of the reasons you sometimes can be suspicious if it is actually a crime of somebody that they were connected to. Then they want to do what they can, just put that wall up of that connection, so that nobody figures out the connection. Otherwise, it won't matter. Nobody know. If somebody taxi driver picks her up and then dumps her someplace, he's not known to be an acquaintance of hers even. So there's no reason to look at him except that he got seen. So he was an idiot. But hold on a second. There it is. Okay. But that's why, did Hunter know her? Well, not that I know of, but okay, let me look for my things on this, because he did go to a lot of work to try to get them not to link him to his wife's disappearance. It was pretty funny. Let's see, what did he do? Okay, where is it? Hold on. Where did he go? Oh, wasn't it in here? Now I'm wondering where I read all this stuff. I read it someplace. I wasn't over focused on him, but I thought he was in this book. But hold on one second. See if I can find. I'll put Hunter in here. See if he shows up. That's okay. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, so here we go. 9 years after the discovery of Carol Lannen's body in Templeton Woods, a walker in another forest on the opposite side of the River Tay also came across a body of a woman who'd been strangled. She was identified as Linda Hunter, the wife of depraved social worker Andrew Hunter, who was subsequently jailed for life for her murder. During his trial, it emerged that he also trawled the city for prostitutes. Okay, so he could be good for Carol's murder. It's just that we just don't know if he was. I don't have a problem with him being a serial killer and also killing Carol. I don't believe for a minute he killed Elizabeth because I believe they had the right guy. But could he have killed Carol? Sure. He trawled the city center for prostitutes. At the time of Carol Lannen's death, the slimly built Hunter was age 28, pale-faced and with a mustache. So now they're saying it looks like that. As I showed you, that sketch could match any one of these three guys. Striking resemblance. No, it wasn't striking. It was just, it could have been. Anyway, he used the services of a number of call girls. Okay, Carol was not a call girl. She was a street prostitute, as far as I know. That's a difference right there. But I'm not saying he couldn't pick up a girl on the street. Among them, a 22-year-old drug addict who apparently committed suicide the day after his wife's corpse was found. So, what, did she know something and he offed her? I mean, it's possible, but again, I don't have any evidence from the police that he did anything to her. I don't know if they were even, I don't know, just don't know. The pair enjoyed sex sessions in their home before and after he murdered his wife. And it was later learned the two had become acquainted when Hunter met the young woman in his role as a social worker. Could that have been the social work contact also for Carol Lannen? Well, we have no proof of that. So that's just making up stuff. I was just trying to see if I could find the, it's not in here. I didn't know where it went to. I was just trying to figure out the work he went to cover up her death. But it's, I don't know, for some reason it's, I know it was the dog leash, and it's not in this. It's not in this book. So let me put in Hunter dog leash, and let's see if I can locate it for you guys. Because he put a wig on and everything. He really worked to hide himself on that crime. Okay, let's see if I can roll it up here. Okay. This is one of them. All right. So what did he actually do? All right. Oh, come on. Now I have to pay to access it. Darn it. I hate it when they do that to me. I can't do that one. Okay. Okay. This is the sex mad killer he was with the Salvation Army at one point. Okay. So let's see where it is here. All right. So hold on a second. Oh, he also had a gay lover. He was basically a little guy. Some of these sites are terrible. They're hard to, they don't. Okay, here we go. Let's see. The day she went missing. All right. He had been on the day Linda went missing, he had been at work, was given a lift to and from work by a neighbor. Wait a minute. Okay. He reported her. Okay, so wait, let's see how it goes here. So Linda disappeared, and the next day reported his wife missing, together with her car and her dog. So the dog and the car were gone. Within a day, they discovered her white Vauxhall car had been found the day before in Manchester, broken into and sitting on double yellow lines. I guess he left the keys on him. That was useful. They checked out Hunter on the day she went missing. Had been at work and was given a lift to and from work by a neighbor. Had bought a pair of trainers in a Dundee shop the next day and gone to a meeting with his boss. It was a foolproof alibi, or was it? So they started testing whether he could have killed his wife, driven her car to Manchester, and still had time to shop and work in Dundee. And the answer to that was yes. So they needed to find her body, and then the dog did them a favor. In a wood close to where the cops had searched, a dog walker The dog walker always finds bodies. Dog walker found Linda's body 7 months after she'd vanished. That was a long time. So he was doing a pretty good job on that one. The cause of death was obvious. Shep's lead was still wound tightly around her neck. When arresting Andrew Hunter for murder, they found him in the company of his junkie girlfriend, and then she died the next day. Here it says a short time after. But this is what he did. He strangled her and dumped her body in the nearby woods. Then he went to work and calmly came home to have tea with his sister-in-law. That night, he'd gone out with his colleagues and was driven home late. But instead of going to bed, he put on a long blonde wig and drove to Manchester, deliberately parking on a double line to attract the cops. Catching a train home, he went out to buy the training shoes to get the time and the receipts. And then, so basically that's what he was trying to cover up, where he was. And then, Shep's collar, though, was still found in the home. And so the leash was around her throat. The dog was out with her, but the collar was not actually there. The collar was, Linda never let the old dog go out without the collar, fearing he would get lost. It was proof Hunter was with Linda when she was killed. It was Shep's revenge. So Hunter, to get the dog helped rat out his mistress's killer. So he's a piece of work. There's no question about it. He really worked to cover up, but he had to do that because it was his wife that he had to do that for. So, but if you're just killing a stranger, you don't usually work as hard unless you're trying to cover up some massive amount of evidence or something. So a lot of times, when you find that kind of a crime, the killer lives within a mile and hasn't really done that much to fake anybody out. So, because it's not necessary. But somebody found, Amy found some of the info. Yes. Yeah, really. Oh, Crime Watch. Yeah, Crime Watch that's they did a lot of shows, Crime Watch. I think they were a little bit better than this one. Oh, well, yes. I mean, now that's the same for serial killers or wife killers, because first of all, they want to look normal as soon as possible. So a lot of times they'll say that we couldn't believe he killed that girl at 7 in the morning when she was found murdered. She was known to have gotten murdered at 7 in the morning. The guy showed up at work at 8 o'clock. But he was perfectly fine. He walked in with his coffee and his Dunkin' Donut, He was fine. We can't believe he did this. But that's what they do because, first of all, they're finished with their job. And so their emotions aren't attached. They have no empathy for their victim. All they want to do is say, hey, well, that's out of the way. And they go on with their day. Now, that's one reason. And the other reason is because they want you to think that they're perfect. They couldn't have done something like that. So he wants to pretend that he's perfectly fine. He kills his wife and then he goes and dumps her body and goes and hangs out with a sister-in-law. I think it was sister-in-law. And because he's acting normal, no one would suspect him. And so if her body hadn't been found with a leash around the neck, it probably wouldn't have. He wouldn't have maybe been caught, but he was caught. It did take quite a few months to find her body. So I guess I didn't see any information there, whether she was in a shallow grave or he had covered her body with anything. I didn't see information on that. So I don't know why her body wasn't found so long, but he may have found may have worked harder in at least hiding her body than the two women in Templeton Woods who were just tossed on the ground. So much easier to find them. Oh, really? He was caught by a viewer of Crime Watch changing his tire. Oh, very cool. Oh, that was that with the wig on? Was that with the wig on? Yeah. Oh, Lord. Yeah. So, but that's my theories on that. I think they had the right guy for Elizabeth. And I don't know who killed Carol because there's literally, there's nothing to prove who ever did anything to her. As I pointed out, just because this guy looks sort of like that also doesn't mean he doesn't look like this. He really can't possibly tell anything from that. So you got two guys who both live in the town. One guy's a wife killer, but one guy is clearly, if he committed this crime, a serial killer. So I would still say Simpson is more likely to have killed her than the wife killer. But I can't prove either one of them because there's nothing actually proving anything here. But even if the wife killer also killed her, then he is a serial killer. So because if he abducted, raped, and murdered somebody and threw her body out in the he just, again, he's not going to do that just once. That's not a situational crime. That's a crime for fun. And people don't just turn around and never do that again. That kind of thing they do again. That's a serial killer. So I believe both these women were killed by a serial killer. I just don't know if it was the same serial killer. And that they would say anything other than that on the show is, considering both of them are supposed to be experts in that, I don't understand it. I was very, very disappointed. I don't like misinformation out there. And I thought that. And it's coming from two very well respected people in their fields. And I think they should have done a better job. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Oh, well, the guys look the same. Well, they do and they don't. And the women look the same, but again, they do and they don't. How exactly the same? They got different eyes. Little things about them are different. But it's sometimes it's just two girls who live in the same area. And if everybody in that area, I don't know what the makeup of people in that area is. Sometimes they'll say that. They're like, oh, that serial killer, he likes girls with white girls with dark hair. Well, maybe it's because mostly white girls with dark hair live in the area, and that's true. Well, back in the day when there were neighborhoods specifically, there are Polish people living here, and over here you had Germans, and over here you had Italians. Well, chances are, if you lived in one of those neighborhoods, you were going to pick on whoever was in that neighborhood. So you would tend to probably kill people who look like you. That's what you would do. But as neighborhoods mixed up more, now you'll find guys who, when they finish catching the person, the one guy will have killed a black woman, a white woman, a Vietnamese woman, a Hispanic woman. He doesn't care. He's not that picky about that. He might occasionally. Some of them sometimes have a type, but Ted Bundy didn't even have a type. All that garbage about, he killed, the white girls with their hair like this, cut, down the middle. Every girl at that age, I had my hair looked exactly the same. I mean, it was a popular hairstyle. College girls in that age, that was the popular hairstyle. So now everybody looked that way, by the way, but he was hitting up college campuses and a lot of girls looked that way. So, yeah. So it's one of those things that it has changed over the years, because it was never true that serial killers aren't killing women who look like their sisters or their mothers or their girlfriends. That's what they used to say, because the similarity to what somebody that looking like their girlfriend, their sister or their mother, but that's only because of the neighborhood they lived in. And so now that things have changed so much, with so much more mixing of races and cultures, you don't get that as much. You still get a tendency toward that if the neighborhood is 80% whatever, or there are still neighborhoods that are 100% of a particular group of people. And serial killers usually kill within a mile of their home, usually, unless they're truckers or have some reason to be on the road a lot. But generally speaking, they kill within very close to their homes. And so they know the area well, and they're lazy, and they just grab whoever's available and dump them where they know the area. And they're not that picky. They need an available victim. And of course, they do have some preferences. They don't, as I point out, they don't kidnap overweight women. And when I say overweight, I mean obese. They don't, because that isn't their prize. They do like prizes, if they can get them, So if you have a choice of a bunch of thinner women walking by and an obese woman, they'll go for thinner. They'll also go for younger and shorter, because those are also easier to handle. And they're not going to go for a woman who's 6 foot. She's a 6'2" basketball player or a boxer type. They're not going to go for that. They're going to go for 5'5", 110 pounds. Yeah, easier. High heels are great, because that way they can't stand up properly. It's easier to grab them. So they do have preferences, but they're not necessarily always going to be that concerned about the look of the victim. So See, you can see there's something good in that, Pam. Keep you safe. Now, mind you, like for example, generally speaking, older women aren't chosen very often by serial killers. Usually when they are, it's extremely young, budding serial killers who live next door to the elderly neighbor because they don't have a car. And they think that she's an easy target. And they want to try it out, see how it works. But generally speaking, if you look at most people who are raped and murdered, they're usually teens and maybe 20s, college girl age. That's the preference. So, see, everybody's saying, "Oh no fat girls, I'm safe." Oh my God. So, okay, so this is the point. Hardly any black people in Dundee at the time, just white, Indian, and Pakistani. So, yeah. And depending on who you live around, who you interact with. Oh, one other thing before I go, I'll say this. You don't want to stand out. So that's one of the reasons sometimes they will pick somebody of the similar race or culture, because if you look that different and act differently, people will remember you. So let's say you're just trying to get a girl off the street and you're sort of like, you're going to drive up and try to get her in your car, and you're in an area, let's say it's a Pakistani area, or you're coming out of a store and you're trying to grab a girl and get her into your car. And if you're a Pakistani dude and she's a Pakistani girl, they're just going to assume you're a couple. They're going to not pay any attention to who you are. Maybe later they say, well, I don't know the guy, but he is Pakistani. I just know. But oh, well, no, it was that 6'2" white guy who was really awkward. We noticed him right away. So suddenly he stood out, and vice versa. So you got to be, that's why dark is nice. Dark takes away a lot of that problem, but you want to make sure that wherever you're crawling around, people aren't paying attention to you. And that's how you get away with the crimes. So that's why Johns get away with also often being a serial killer, because they are not out of place. If they're a regular John, they're not out of place in the neighborhood. Everybody knows them, and so they would never even suspect them because it's just a regular customer. So anyway, that's it for today. It was it's one of these crimes that it should have, at least this should have been solved. I really don't understand how the jury didn't find that guy guilty. But the documentary was sad, and don't use that documentary as an idea of how to profile and how to figure out who is connected to a crime. Don't paste crimes on people. That's what they did with Hunter. Just because he's killing his wife and a psychopath, to go back and find one guy, one ex-neighbor and his wife, to say he had a red Cortina and was a pervert peeping in at the wife. You find this one couple, and then you say he could have crossed paths with her as a social worker, and then the witness didn't even actually see that. That was the hypnosis thing. So this is all made up stuff to pin on this guy. And I don't know if they just did that for the point of the television show, or that Wilson actually believed this crap. But he's sitting there all giddy going, oh, look, I found out he said it this way. We found out he had a red Cortina. No, you didn't. That's just a played out lie. Why did you say that? Unless you told me you went and checked on that title and said, look, we found out that in 1979, he had this red Cortina. Here it is with his name on it. Unless you can say that, you shouldn't be on television saying that. And I went back and actually had to listen to it twice to make sure that he didn't just say, well, it'd be interesting. His neighbor thinks he had a red Ford Cortina at the time. Wouldn't it be interesting to find out if he did? Now, if he said that, then I'd be okay about that. But he made it sound, he basically told the audience that this neighbor knew what he was talking about. And I don't know how is he going to know that? Because I'm sure he didn't spend a whole lot of time with that neighbor. Just annoying. It's so annoying. So, yeah, a very poor example of profiling. So when I do come across a really good documentary with good profiling in it, I'll let you know, so that they do exist. And sometimes I've been very impressed by the detectives in them or by a profiler in them. And I'm like, oh, wow, that was really good. Very, very useful. And that really teaches people the right things. This one, not so much. So anyway, most welcome, Lady Jane. And I'm going to go eat my dinner, and I will be back Wednesday or Thursday. Will be I think it's a 3 o'clock show for the hangout this week. So Wednesday or Thursday when I figure out which day. So anyway, glad you all were here. And again, if you're new to the show, please do check the link below. And if you want to join Patreon, that does help an educational channel keep going. Otherwise, please just subscribe and come back. And I guess that's the point. It doesn't do any good to subscribe if you don't come back. We'll miss you. But anyway, thank you for being here. Bye.